The first thing they told me was to never watch camera 12 after 3 a.m. But last night, I did. It wasn't part of the orientation packet, of course. No corporate handbook has a chapter labeled Forbidden Monitors. It came as a whisper from one of the older guards, muttered half like a joke, half like a dare. I laughed at the time, because who wouldn't? It sounded like a cheap horror movie setup. But sitting in that chair, the home of fluorescent lights overhead, my eyes locked on a wall of 24 flickering screens, I realized just how serious he had been. At first, camera 12 looked normal. A long stretch of Costco's frozen foods aisle, empty as always. The neat stacks of pizza boxes, the ice reflecting the dim light, the condensation fogging faintly on the glass doors. But the longer I watched, the more I noticed something, a shape, just barely out of place. It wasn't moving like a shopper. It wasn't moving like a coworker either. And the longer I kept my eyes on it, the more I felt like it was watching me back. You want to know what I saw, don't you? You're not going to click away until I tell you. That's the same problem I had. Once the thought hooks in, you can't shake it. But before I explain what was standing in that aisle, before I tell you why my reflection no longer matches me in every mirror at home, you need context. Because none of this will make sense unless you understand how I ended up here. It started like any boring job story. A broke 20-something needing extra cash, applying for night shifts because they paid $1 more per hour. Nothing supernatural about it. Just a name tag, a blue vest, and the corporate promise of stability. If only that's all it had been.
When I first signed the paperwork, it all felt hilariously ordinary. A giant warehouse full of bulk groceries and oversized teddy bears didn't exactly scream haunted workplace. My first day was orientation, safety videos from the 90s, a corporate trainer with a smile that never touched her eyes, and the promise of a free Costco hot dog during lunch. It felt like the safest, most predictable gig I could have picked. The night crew was small, just 5 of us, plus a manager who looked like he'd given up on life decades ago. Everyone else had their quirks. Jason, the forklift operator, was a big guy who spoke in one-liners ripped straight from action movies. Marie, the stalker, had a sense of humor darker than the empty aisles we worked in. And then there was Walter, the security guard I was paired with for training. He was the one who leaned in on my first night and whispered, "Just don't stare too long at the screens." I laughed, waiting for the punchline, but Walter didn't crack a smile. He just went back to sipping his coffee and muttering about glitches. The rest of training was the usual nonsense. How to use the scanner guns, how to lock the receiving doors, which aisles customers somehow always messed up the most during the day. We joked about corporate slogans, made fun of safety posters, and killed time stacking endless pallets of cereal. For a while, it was easy to forget the place was empty, that the overhead lights buzzed like dying insects, and that the shadows between aisles seemed to shift if you didn't look straight at them. Even in the break room, though, I couldn't shake Walter's comment. Don't stare too long at the screens. He said it again when I clocked out, as if repetition would carve it into my skull. Most jobs have rules. Don't steal, don't be late, don't forget to clock out. But this one had a rule that felt personal. Like it wasn't made for efficiency or safety, but for survival. At the time, I brushed it off, thinking maybe he was just messing with the new guy. But later, when I found myself alone in front of the glowing wall of cameras, Walter's warning was the only thing echoing in my head.
Night shifts at Costco are nothing glamorous. People imagine we're running forklifts through empty aisles, blasting music while stacking pallets of bulk candy, but most of it is monotony. It's a skeleton crew of half-asleep adults wandering a warehouse big enough to swallow a city block. You hear your own footsteps more than anyone else's. The sound gets under your skin after a while, like the building is breathing with you. Most nights, I started with stalking. Grab a scanner gun, beep a barcode, haul a box onto a shelf. Repeat until your back aches. The aisles are absurdly long at night. When the place is lit up by fluorescent strips and no customers are around, they look more like tunnels than grocery aisles. Every so often, Jason would roar past on the forklift, grinning like a maniac, and yell something like, "Get to the chopper!" just to break the silence. Marie, meanwhile, kept things interesting by inventing fake Costco conspiracies. She once swore the rotisserie chickens were genetically engineered to grow without heads. Another time, she said the giant teddy bears weren't stuffed, they were filled with missing return items. I laughed, but there was always that undertone to her jokes. You know, the kind of humor people use when they're actually nervous. Security rotation was the strangest part. Walter showed me how to monitor the cameras from the little control room perched above the floor. It felt weird watching 24 different views of the same empty building, like I was spying on myself stocking shelves below. Walter would sit there, drinking coffee, barely blinking, like he was waiting for something. When I asked him what we were supposed to be watching for, he just muttered, "You'll see soon enough." That's when I started noticing the small things. Pallets that had been stacked neatly at midnight would suddenly be lopsided an hour later, even if nobody went near them. A back door that had been padlocked at the start of the shift would be found cracked open just a sliver. Marie swore she once walked past aisle 14 and saw someone duck behind the paper towels, only to find the aisle completely empty. We told ourselves it was exhaustion, tricks of the eye, or corporate carelessness. It's easier to believe you misplaced a pallet than to consider the alternative, that something else is moving them. But every night, the list of unexplainables grew a little longer. One evening, after weeks of settling into routine, Walter decided I was ready to take the cameras alone. He handed me his mug of stale coffee, clapped me on the back, and said, "Don't let the screens eat you." He walked off toward the break room without another word, leaving me in the dim control booth with the hum of monitors filling the silence. I'd told myself it was just another task. Sit in the chair, watch the screens, call it in if anything happens. Simple, boring, routine. That's what I thought until camera 12 flickered. I should have looked away. Instead, I leaned closer. The monitors glowed a dull green in the dark room, static humming like faint whispers. Most of them were boring. Jason moving pallets near receiving, Marie reorganizing soup cans in aisle 6, the empty stretch of the freezer section. Then my eyes caught camera 9. There was someone there. The figure looked like an employee. Blue vest, black pants, the standard uniform. They were bent slightly, stocking boxes onto a shelf in aisle 14. For a second, I thought it was Marie. Same height, same dark ponytail. But when I checked the roster, Marie was still down in aisle 6, humming to herself, loud enough that I could hear it faintly, even from the control room. I leaned closer. The person on camera 9 didn't move right. Their motions were off. They bent too low, arms hinging awkwardly, like they were learning how to stack boxes for the very first time. Every few seconds, their head would twitch toward the camera. Just a quick, unnatural snap before returning to the shelf. "Marie?" I muttered, though I knew she couldn't hear me. I clicked to another monitor that showed the same aisle from a different angle. It was empty. Just shelves, just boxes, just silence. Flip back to camera 9, the figure was still there. Flip again, gone. My stomach sank. Maybe it was a recording, a glitch. I wanted it to be anything but real. The mind grabs for rationality when it feels the floor slipping away. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that whoever or whatever it was knew I was watching. Each twitch of its head seemed sharper, more deliberate, like it was trying to catch my gaze through the glass. You're probably thinking I imagined it, that I was tired, wired from bad coffee and humming lights. I thought the same thing, until Jason walked into the control room. "Yo, rookie," he said, startling me so hard I almost toppled from the chair. He was holding a bag of Doritos, grinning like usual. "You look like you saw a ghost." I glanced back at camera 9. Empty aisle, perfectly still. I opened my mouth, but the words stuck.
How do you tell someone you just saw an employee that doesn't exist stocking invisible shelves? Jason crunched loudly, oblivious. Relax, place is dead after midnight, nothing ever happens. But I knew better. Something had happened, and camera 9 was just the beginning. It didn't stop with camera 9. Once you notice something wrong on those screens, you start seeing it everywhere. A week later, I was flipping through the feeds when aisle 4 looped on itself. I don't mean the footage skipped, I mean the aisle stretched on forever, repeating the same row of cereal boxes and snack packs like a copy-paste error. Jason walked past in real life, whistling as he dragged a pallet, but on the monitor, he never appeared. The aisle just kept going. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, and when I looked back, it was normal again. I told Marie about it during break, but she just smirked. "Warehouse plays tricks on you," she said, chewing her sandwich. "That's why we get to pay the big bucks." But it wasn't just looping aisles. The mannequins in the clothing section started shifting between frames. In person, they were lifeless plastic, smiles frozen under fluorescent light. On camera, their heads tilted. Not much, just a few degrees left or right. Enough that I couldn't convince myself it was an accident. One night, I swear, I saw a mannequin standing in a spot where no mannequin had ever been placed. The worst was camera 17. It showed the main entrance, big glass doors locked and chained after hours. I was scanning casually when a hand waved directly at the camera. Friendly, like someone signaling hello. But the vestibule was empty. No one inside, no one outside. Just that still hand on the monitor, held for 3 long seconds before dropping out of frame. I ran down to check the doors. Locked, silent. The lot was a desert of sodium orange light. Not even a stray cat moved across the asphalt. When I told Walter, he stared at me over his mug. "Managers know," he said flatly, as if it were common knowledge. "But they won't say anything. Easier that way." He never elaborated, and I didn't have the nerve to press him. Every time I brought up the cameras to my coworkers, I got the same reaction. Shrugs, jokes, or silence. Jason blamed my rookie brain. Marie suggested maybe I needed stronger coffee. But in their eyes, I saw it. Flickers of recognition, like they'd seen these things too. It gnawed at me. Each shift, I found myself drawn back to the monitors. I'd pretend to stalk or sweep, but my thoughts were on those screens. Were the mannequins waiting for me to blink? Would the hand return at the door? And most of all, what about camera 12? The one no one would talk about. I noticed how Walter never switched to it, how Marie avoided glancing at its feed. Even Jason, the guy who joked about everything, once muttered, "Don't screw with 12, man," before quickly changing the subject. So, I made a decision. If everyone else was too scared to face it, I'd find out for myself. And that's when things really went wrong.
The rule was simple, stupidly simple. Never, under any circumstance, watch camera 12 after 3 a.m. At first, I thought it was just a dumb inside joke. Every workplace has one, right? Some ritual passed from veteran to rookie. But the way they treated it, like gospel, made me uneasy. Marie was the first to mention it. She was half laughing, but her eyes weren't. If you're ever on monitor duty, just skip 12 after 3. Trust me. Jason brushed it off with his usual sarcasm. Yeah, unless you want to end up like Rick. He wouldn't explain who Rick was. When I pressed, he just grinned and said, "Exactly." Even Walter, who'd been there forever, tightened his jaw when I brought it up. It's not a joke, just don't. And that was it. No further explanation. That only made it worse. Because the thing about rules you're not supposed to break, they gnaw at you. They get under your skin, sit in the back of your mind, whispering. And the longer you obey them, the more your curiosity starves until it's unbearable. I'd catch myself glancing at the monitor bank, lingering too long on the black square where camera 12's feed sat quiet during the day. Nobody touched it, nobody joked about it, nobody even acknowledged it existed past sundown. It was like pretending not to notice the elephant in the room, except this elephant was a glowing screen that apparently showed something worse than anyone wanted to admit. One night, Jason leaned over while I flipped through feeds. "You're dying to know, huh?" he whispered, like he could read my thoughts. He was right, and if you're listening, you're probably dying to know too. What's on camera 12? Why 3 a.m.? Why the silence around it? I was too, and eventually, I broke the rule.
It was 2:59 a.m. when I gave in. The rest of the warehouse was quiet, the kind of silence you only notice when you're utterly alone. Forklifts parked, aisles stocked, my coworkers scattered, somewhere between the break room and the far-off freezer section. The monitor glow painted my face pale. 11 cameras hummed along, their feeds the same familiar loops of concrete floors and towering shelves. And then there was camera 12, sitting there like a dare. I hovered my finger over the control pad, heart tapping hard in my chest. A voice in my head begged me to stop. Marie's warning, Walter's sternness, Jason's smirk. But another voice, quieter, sharper, whispered back, "Don't you want to know?" 3 a.m. I clicked it. At first, nothing. Just another aisle, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, cardboard stacked neatly. It looked normal. Too normal. I almost laughed at myself. Months of build-up for this? Maybe the whole superstition really was a gag. I leaned back in my chair, shaking my head. That's when the figure walked into frame. I froze, because it wasn't a coworker, it was me. Same jacket, same posture, same tired eyes. My reflection, strolling down the aisle on the monitor, hands brushing along the boxes like he owned the place. Only, I hadn't left the security office. I could see my own shaking hands still resting on the controls. I leaned closer, pulse hammering. The double slowed, stopped, tilted his head like he'd heard something, and then, impossibly, he turned, facing the camera head on, facing me. I swallowed hard, skin prickling. The double's lips curled into a half smile. Not mine. Wrong. He lifted one hand and waved. "No," I whispered. My chair scraped back against the floor. My body wanted distance from the screen, but my eyes wouldn't let go. The double stepped closer, footsteps silent in that frozen feed. His lips moved, forming words I couldn't hear, over and over, like a chant. I tried to crank up the volume, adjust the feed, anything. That's when the static started. Jagged lines cut across the screen, warping his face into something jagged and sharp. I caught one glimpse of his mouth, stretched too wide, shaping letters that didn't belong to me. Then black. The feed cut. The rest of the cameras flickered back into focus, perfectly ordinary, like nothing had happened at all. I sat there, chest heaving, staring at my pale reflection in the dark glass of the monitor. Had anyone else seen? No. It was just me and him. And the worst part? The double had looked straight into the camera, into me, like he wasn't on the other side of the glass, like he was aware. And whatever he mouthed, whatever he wanted to tell me, I didn't hear it. But I couldn't stop replaying it in my head, desperate to know.
I thought leaving Costco would mean leaving it behind, but the moment I walked through my apartment door, I realized the cameras weren't the only things watching me anymore. It started small. My bathroom mirror hesitated. That's the only way I can describe it. I raised my hand to brush my teeth, and my reflection took just a fraction of a second too long to follow.
a blink late, like a glitch in a video call. I tried to laugh it off. Long shifts, too much caffeine, but it kept happening. In the window above my sink, in the black screen of my TV at night, even the reflection on my phone. Sometimes I swear I caught my own eyes narrowing at me before I did the movement. I stopped sleeping much. My sister called, asking why I sounded so strange, so distant. I lied, said work was just stressful. She didn't buy it. "You don't sound like yourself," she told me. And maybe she was right, because more and more, I felt like someone else was wearing my skin, just a few steps behind. When I walked past store windows downtown, I didn't always see me. Sometimes it was the version from camera 12, smiling too long, looking too directly. The worst part, I wasn't alone. During one of our smoke breaks, Marie muttered, "You've been seeing it too, huh?" She didn't even wait for my answer, just tapped her lighter nervously and said, "It follows some of us home. You'll get used to it." But the way she said it, flat, resigned, sent ice through my veins. Get used to it? No, I couldn't. I wouldn't. If this thing had leaked out of Costco's walls, it wasn't just a warehouse problem. It was in me, in the glass, in every reflection that lingered a heartbeat too long. I knew then that I had to find out the truth. If my coworkers knew more, if the managers were keeping secrets, if this had happened before, I needed answers. Because whatever followed me home wasn't just watching anymore. It was waiting. It was Carl who finally cracked. Old guy, gray stubble, been working nights longer than anyone could remember. The kind of man who spoke in half grunts and chain smoked like his lungs were already pawned off. We were shelving in the frozen aisle when he muttered, "You've been watching 12, haven't you?" I froze. Didn't answer, didn't have to. Carl set down his box cutter and leaned against the pallet. Lost a buddy to that feed. Back in 2009. Good man. Came in one night, same as always, but he looked off. Like his smile was just a little too practiced. By the end of the week, he was gone. No trace. He scratched his jaw, voice dropping lower. Costco didn't say a damn word, just scrubbed his name from the schedule and told the rest of us to keep stocking, like he'd never worked here at all. I swallowed hard, asked what the hell Camera 12 actually was. Carl gave me a look I'll never forget, the kind that says, "You don't want the answer." Finally, he said, "Costco ain't the only place. Ask around Walmart, Target, Sam's Club, hell, even some grocery chains. Every store's got a feed they don't put in the employee handbook. Different numbers, same rules. Never after 3. I tried to laugh, but my voice cracked. So what, it's like nationwide, a corporate curse? Carl lit another cigarette right there in frozen foods, took a slow drag. Call it whatever you want, kid. Just know the managers know. They always know. That's why they never work graveyard themselves. The thought hit me like a gut punch. A whole network of stores, a whole country of cameras, all watching something that wasn't supposed to be there. Carl pushed off the pallet and walked away, leaving me shivering harder than the freezer air ever could. I didn't want to believe him, but deep down, I knew. And with my next shift already hours away, I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever took his friend was still hungry.
My last shift began like every other. Clock in, badge scan, stale coffee, the hum of fluorescent lights that never sleep. But the second I stepped into the control room, I knew something had changed. Every monitor flickered at once, not static, not glitches, more like stuttering film reels, each a fraction out of sync. I leaned in, heart thudding, as the aisles filled with figures. Not customers, not coworkers. Shadows of them. copies. There was Tony pushing a cart with empty boxes, Carl dragging his cigarette smoke behind him like fog, even me, head down, scanning shelves like a machine. The strangest part wasn't that they were there, it was that none of them were actually on the floor. I'd walked in with Carl that night. Tony had called off. And me, I was right here, in this chair, watching myself work a shift I hadn't lived. I told myself to look away, but my eyes locked on the feed. One of the versions of me paused mid-aisle, straightened, and turned toward the camera. It wasn't just facing the lens, it was looking at me. I felt my throat dry up. On screen, my double lifted a hand and waved. Slow. Mocking. Then it began to walk down the aisle, row after row, never breaking eye contact with the camera. I scanned the monitors, trying to track it. Aisle 4, aisle 3, past the frozen foods. My pulse hammered louder with each step it took closer to the security office. Then, on the bottom left monitor, I saw it. The door to the control room. On screen, my double reached for the handle. Behind me, the knob turned. The metal groaned. I couldn't breathe, couldn't scream. I was watching myself about to enter while hearing the real door creak open in perfect sync. And the worst part? I wasn't sure anymore which version of me was on the screen and which one was about to walk in.
If you ever find yourself working night shift at a Costco, remember this. Don't sit in front of the cameras too long. Don't linger on the feeds. And whatever you do, never watch camera 12 after 3 a.m. Because if you already have, it's probably too late. I don't know how much longer I can keep this up. Every time I pass a mirror now, I hesitate. Every time I catch my reflection in a dark window, I swear it moves a split second slower, like it's deciding whether to follow. I've tried not to think about what happened in that control room, about the door creaking open, about the copy of me stepping through. Did I run? Did it replace me? Or am I the copy now, telling you this story? You'll never know for sure, but maybe you'll find out on your own. Costco isn't the only place with cameras. The rule doesn't stop at one store. So tell me, what do you think I saw? Do you believe me? Or are you willing to sit in front of your own screen long enough to find out? Go ahead. Keep watching. If you made it this far, maybe you're braver than most, or maybe you're just curious enough to ignore the warnings. Either way, I've got more stories, stranger ones, darker ones, that I promise will keep you up at night. So if you want to hear them, hit subscribe and turn on the bell, because once you're here, there's no going back. And before you leave, tell me in the comments, what do you think the cameras were really showing? Because I have a feeling someone else out there has seen the same thing, and I'd really like to know I'm not alone.